Good morning, evening, or night, wherever you are. Welcome to WHAM today. Take a deep breath, clear your mind, and let's drift through the whispers of today's world, one quiet thought at a time. As we wrap up Sunday, 29th June 2025, let's see what stories are unfolding around us. China's economic landscape presents a mixed picture. Manufacturing activity showed a slight increase in June, yet it remained in contraction for the third month running, hindered by weak demand and ongoing trade friction with the United States, including elevated tariffs that have dampened US-bound export. This situation has intensified price competition among Chinese manufacturers. Despite these headwinds, mainland Chinese and Hong Kong stocks are projected to rise in the latter half of the year, buoyed by anticipated policy support from Beijing aimed at revitalizing earnings growth. Standard Chartered has expressed an overweight position on Chinese equities. The Shanghai Composite Index reflected this sentiment, rising 0.59%. However, Hong Kong stocks have demonstrated vulnerability, declining after a government report highlighted struggling manufacturing, and as traders braced for volatility ahead of a U.S. trade deadline. A slump in home sales is prompting calls for increased stimulus measures. The country's stock regulator has also unveiled a revamped logo, eliciting varied responses. China has reopened its market to seafood imports from Japan, ending a nearly 2-year ban that was imposed due to concerns about the treated wastewater discharge from the Fukushima nuclear power plant. Despite U.S. sanctions, China continues to be a significant purchaser of discounted Iranian oil through an intricate shadow supply chain named WHAM. Sales of Russian base metals to China have surged, indicating an increasing economic reliance on Russia. The nation is also advancing in technological development, with Baidu open sourcing its Ernie Gen AI large language model. Sofgo, a Chinese chipmaker, has adapted its compute card to power DeepSeek's reasoning model in an effort to reduce dependence on foreign chips amid tightening U.S. export control. TCL Technology is leading the way in sustainability and branding, pioneering the first sustainability-linked offshore syndicated loan in China's display panel industry. Shanghai Electric has been ranked 47th on World Brand Labs China's 500 Most Valuable Brands list, with a brand value of US $31.80 billion. Lens Technology is planning to raise up to $608 million through a Hong Kong listing. China's electric car manufacturers are aggressively cutting prices to boost sales amidst an oversupply of electric vehicles. In the satellite internet market, China faces competition from Elon Musk's Starlink, the European Union, and Jeff Bezos. United States. The United States is grappling with challenges in the rare earth metal sector, facing concerns about losing ground to China and a growing sentiment to treat critical minerals as geopolitical assets. President Trump's energy policies, characterized as a big, beautiful bill, are projected to have a negative impact on clean energy by taxing components from China and phasing out credits. The metals company, led by CEO Gerard Barron, is seeking permission from the Trump administration to mine the ocean floor for nickel and cobalt to counter China's dominance in these resources, although other countries dispute America's right to these minerals. Fireworks enthusiasts in the U.S. may encounter higher prices this Independence Day due to import taxes of at least 30% on fireworks manufactured in China. Taiwan is reducing its reliance on China, with the U.S. becoming its top export market. Ironically, Kokona Labs, a textile company, is considering shifting part of its production business to China due to Trump's tariffs, a move that contradicts the intended effect of the tariffs. Meta Platforms has recruited 4 leading scientists from OpenAI to bolster its competitive position in the global AI race. Other countries, entities. Japan has seen China lift a nearly 2-year ban on its seafood, which was imposed due to concerns over treated wastewater discharge from Fukushima. Indonesia is facing economic pressure despite China maintaining stainless steel levies. Australia is contending with the threat posed by China's expanding EV market. South Korea is fostering cultural and tourism exchanges with China through colorful Chinese, intangible cultural heritage projects. United States, the U.S. Senate is currently evaluating President Trump's One Big, Beautiful Bill Act, which the Congressional Budget Office projects could increase the national debt by $3.30 trillion over the next 10 years and cause substantial health care coverage losses. This has amplified worries regarding the country's escalating debt, particularly as the US dollar is experiencing an 11% decline over a 6-month period due to investor concerns about Trump's economic strategies and increasing government debt. Demand for the dollar globally is also decreasing as central banks shift their reserves into gold and other currencies. However, the U.S. stock market has experienced a surge, with the Dow Jones, S&P 500, and NASDAQ reaching record highs, fueled by investor optimism regarding potential trade agreements and merger activity. This rally coincides with progress in trade negotiations and bets on future Federal Reserve easing. J.P. Morgan, however, cautions that possible erroneous rate cuts by the Federal Reserve could trigger significant instability in our stock, bond, and foreign exchange market. In related news, the U.S. has overtaken China as Taiwan's leading export market. Canada. Turning to Canada, trade discussions between Canada and the U.S. have restarted following Canada's decision to withdraw its proposal to tax us, technology companies. This development has improved investor confidence, boosting Wall Street futures and the Toronto Stock Exchange. Europe. Across the Atlantic, investors are increasingly focusing on Europe, seeing it as a more stable investment environment compared to the US. In related news, Robinhood has expanded its services in Europe, introducing tokens that will allow EU users to trade in our stocks and crypto futures. Spain. Shifting to Spain, the nation is currently hosting a major international conference. The conference is centered on addressing the growing divide between wealthy and impoverished nations and finding ways to mobilize the trillions of dollars needed to close this gap. Russia, Belarus, Ukraine. In Eastern Europe, Belarus and Russia are preparing to exchange confidential financial information. The Kremlin has issued a statement asserting that the implementation of the U.S. sanctions bill will negatively affect peace initiatives in Ukraine. South Korea. Moving to South Korea, economic experts are forecasting that US tariff policies will have a considerable negative impact on the South Korean economy. Lesotho. In Africa. The textile industry in Lesotho has experienced minimal benefits from the U.S. tariff pause. Taiwan. Focusing on Taiwan, Chinese chip-making stocks are increasing amidst rising tensions related to Taiwan's exports. Meanwhile, the U.S. has become Taiwan's top export destination, surpassing China. India experienced a tragic incident as an explosion and fire at a pharmaceutical factory in Telangana led to at least 12 deaths and several injuries. Shifting to economic news, industries supplying Apple's Chinese factories are increasingly establishing operations in India, creating opportunities for manufacturers like Foxconn and supporting onshoring initiatives. The Indian stock market saw volatility, with the Nifty 50 and Sensex initially climbing for the 4th consecutive month in June, boosted by foreign investments and RBI's supportive measures, particularly benefiting large-cap banks and NB fees. However, profit booking, notably in banking stocks, caused a market downturn on June 30, ending the winning streak. The Sensex closed at 83,606.46, down 452 points, 0.54%, and the Nifty 50 settled at 25,517.05, a loss of 121 points, 0.47%. Despite small-cap sector challenges and geopolitical factors, optimism persists regarding the Indian stock market, driven by corporate earnings and consumption growth, with analysts predicting the Nifty 50 index may soon reclaim the 26,000 mark. Several companies are actively engaged in market activities, including Pure Foods India, which has filed a RHP with SEBI for an upcoming IPO, consisting of a fresh issue of shares worth ₹100 crore and an offer for sale involving 4.85 crore equity shares by existing stakeholders, while Adani Enterprises plans a public bond sector. Torrent Pharma is poised to acquire a controlling stake in JB and Pharma. India's pharmaceutical sector faced a 6% decline in the Nifty Pharma Index in 2025, contrasting with the Nifty 50's 8% rise, with major firms experiencing losses amid tariff and macroeconomic concerns. In other economic developments, the RBI cut short Forex derivative book to $65.20 billion. India remains a key driver of global growth, according to the RBI's Malhotra. India's bond index moment faltered as foreign inflows dried up. India is expected to receive above normal rains in July, which will spur crop sowing. Additionally, a fugitive tycoon's assets were offered for $58 at an India sale. Finally, Neo Energy Metals is set to complete a fast-track listing on the JSE. Canada has rescinded its digital services tax, aiming to restart trade talks with the United States. These talks were previously halted by U.S. President Donald Trump, who criticized the tax as targeting U.S. technology companies. Prime Minister Mark Carney announced that trade discussions with the U.S. would recommence following the tax's removal. Canada's decision reflects a balancing act between national security concerns, such as the order for a Chinese company to hold operations, and the potential economic consequences of strained relations with the U.S. The market responded positively to the tax's removal, with tax futures rising. This also contributed to gains in major U.S. indices, the S&P 500, Nasdaq Composite, and Dow Jones Industrial Average. The S&P 500 increased by 0.3% to 6,188.95. The Nasdaq Composite rose 0.3% to 20,000. Nuvei has also become a direct local acquirer in Canada. Europe is currently grappling with an intense heat wave, pushing temperatures past 40 degrees Celsius in countries like Italy, Spain, and Greece, which in turn elevates the danger of wildfires. European shares initially outpaced Wall Street in the year's first half, though whether this trend will persist into the second half of 2025 is uncertain. More recently, European stock performance has been muted, with investors keenly watching for advancements in U.S. trade negotiation. European poultry is also finding increased demand in South Korea, bolstered by an EU promotional campaign. Robinhood is broadening its crypto services in the EU, introducing stock tokens, a Layer 2 blockchain, perpetual futures, and staking options. Turning to the United States, the S&P 500 has reclaimed its all-time highs, mirroring the advances seen in European and Chinese stock markets as U.S. markets recover ground. Robinhood is also expanding its crypto offerings in the U.S., introducing stock tokens, a Layer 2 blockchain, perpetual futures, and staking options. Japan is seeing its Nikkei index reach an 11-month high, fueled by U.S. stock rallies and increased investor risk appetite. The Nikkei 225 closed up 0.8%. Industrial output figures are under close observation as factory output rose in May, although tariff pressures create economic uncertainty. Japan is also hosting renewed negotiations with the Gulf Cooperation Council, JCC, in Tokyo, aiming for a free trade agreement, FTA. Japan Display is undertaking strategic moves to meet Tokyo Stock Exchange, compliance standards and drive growth. The United States is seeing increased popularity of tiny Japanese kei cars and trucks. Taiwan is looking to resume fresh pork exports to Japan. Mirroring cautious global sentiments, Asian shares have shown mixed performance, even as U.S. stocks reached record highs. The anticipation surrounding U.S. trade talks heavily influences Asian markets. Fluctuations in Asian currencies, including a sharp drop in the Taiwan dollar, also contribute to the market's volatility. However, most Asian foreign exchange markets saw monthly gains due to a softening U.S. dollar. Asian banks are increasingly active in the Middle East, driving a loan boom that has surpassed $2 billion. Meanwhile, Eurasia is exploring the establishment of a new Gulf hub, considering both Ras Al Khaimah and Saudi Arabia as potential locations. The ongoing geopolitical tensions are significantly reshaping global air travel. Iran's recent strikes and retaliatory actions by Israel have led to temporary airport and airspace closures. These closures disrupt flight schedules and increase operational costs for airlines. The rerouting of flights adds to travel times and fuel consumption. Safety concerns are also heightened due to the unpredictable nature of these conflicts. Meanwhile, the war in Ukraine continues to impact European airspace. Airlines are avoiding routes over or near conflict zones. This avoidance adds to flight times and costs. The aviation industry is adapting to these challenges by adjusting routes and schedules. They are also working with international aviation authorities to ensure passenger safety. The tensions are further influencing global oil markets. The European Union is considering tightening sanctions against Russia. These sanctions aim to limit Russia's revenue from oil exports. At the same time, the conflict between Iran and Israel is driving oil prices higher. Investors fear disruptions to oil supplies from the Middle East. Russia has warned of potential global chaos. The Kremlin cited calls for regime change in Iran as a destabilizing factor. They claim such calls could exacerbate regional tensions and lead to wider conflicts. Russia has accused the West of fueling these tensions. The country maintains that diplomacy is the only viable solution. Gas prices in the Netherlands and the United Kingdom saw a decrease as Norway increased its gas supply. The United Kingdom was the first country to secure a deal with the White House after the U.S. President Donald Trump unveiled reciprocal tariff proposals targeting the automobile sector. The conflict in Ukraine has prompted Goldman Sachs to revise its outlook on the drone industry, suggesting drones will play a more significant role in future defense strategies. European Union leaders are eyeing a trade agreement with the United States, with European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen pushing for a deal by July 9th, potentially starting as a framework agreement. Shifting to Greece, a hard-right lawmaker has been appointed and sworn in as the country's new migration minister. And that's a wrap for today's news, because even headlines need a nap. Stay curious, stay kind, and let the noise fade as you find your quiet. Take care, stay awesome, and I'll see you next time on WHAM Today.